afternoon, ghouls and fiends. Welcome. No, but my God, I've tongue-tied myself already. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host Tezz, and we're back. We're back, trying to get back to releasing for the weekend. We managed it by the skin of our teeth last week, but yeah, we're getting back on top of things. I hope everyone is well and has enjoyed their last week. Whatever horror you've been engaging in, watching, reading, playing, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. We had a bit of a horror bonanza over here yesterday. So early in the week, it was my birthday. Another year older, yay! And had some friends come up to visit, and also some local friends to eat pizza, drink beer, and watch horror films. I mean, what more could you ask for? We managed to watch Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, which I do realise there was a bit of an error on my part last week. I said I'd been watching a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. I haven't. Friday the 13th films, but I do very little preparation for these shows in terms of like any sorts of notes or anything like that. So I tend to just have a verbal diarrhea, and I'll get things wrong occasionally / quite often. So I meant last week Friday the 13th films, but we watched Part 4. We then watched oh my God, what did we watch next? We watched Friday the 13th Part 4. We watched Scream 6. We watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre Remake. And then watched the other guys. Bit of a comedy to end the evening. You've always got to, after a bit of a horror fest, have something light-hearted to cool down with. So we went with that, but it was a great time. I had a great evening. And also, since the last show, I've been able to watch a couple of new horror films. So for today, we have reviews of the Shudder, a couple of Shudder exclusives actually. When the Screaming Starts, bit of a comedy horror. They've also recently had Oddity, which I've been looking forward to watching for a little while. It's dropped on there. And I managed to get down to the cinema on my birthday to watch Strange Darling, which I'd seen a fair bit of buzz about on social media. Even Stephen King himself saying, watch this film, it's great. So we're going to have reviews of those a bit later on. We've got a lot of news to go through. And when I say a lot of news, it's predominantly a lot of new films that have come out in the last week. Well, a lot of them came out on my birthday from the looks of things, but haven't been able to watch those. I've watched enough already. I say that as we are just getting ever so closer to the start of official spooky month, and which I'll be watching 31 horror films in 31 days. I need to find my list of what the various days criteria is, so I can start thinking about what films I want to watch on those days. But I feel I'm prepared this year, I should say, to really just watch a shit ton of horror films, basically. But without further ado, ghouls and fiends, let's crack on with the horror news. This is the news. Ho ho ho.
You hang up on me again, I'll cut you like a fish, understand?
Boom, horror news time. So this is all my horror news comes from bloodydisgusting.com. This is a write-up from John Squires. It's the 11 new horror movies that are released on September 24th. So I have watched the trailers for these. There's 11. I'm gonna kind of just briefly run through the opening parts of these blurbs, because there's like multiple paragraphs per film. And I've got things to do, people to see, places to be. So, we're going to just try and do this briefly. Breaking Glass Pictures celebrates Halloween with Hayride to Hell, an indie movie that reunites horror legends Bill Moseley and Kane Hodder. It's now available on VOD outlets. The team previews Bill Moseley, known for his roles in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and House of a Thousand Corpses, brings his intense, chilling presence to the role of Farmer Sam. Kane Hodder, famous for his portrayal of Jason Voorhees in 4 Friday the 13th films, adds his unique, menacing charm as the corrupt Sheriff Jubal. Their pairing makes Hayride to Hell a must-see for horror enthusiasts and a tribute to the legends of the genre. Set in the Cove family farm in rural Willis County, Farmer Sam exacts his bloody revenge on unscrupulous local townfolk, including Sheriff Jubal, who menace him and attempt to steal the farm that has been in his family for 200 years. So, trailer for this, yeah, it's got a couple of horror legends in it, but it's very much on the indie side of the indie movie scale, if that makes any kind of sense. In terms of the production sensibilities, you can see that the money went on the two horror legends fees. That is, I know that's a little bit disparaging of me, but when you watch a trailer, you normally get an idea of what kind of production quality you're going to get. This could be a fun film. I'd keep an eye out for it if it arrives on one of my free services. I'm not going to rush out to buy it. There we go. The other good news, actually, interesting news. So the Salem's Lot, I don't think this is featured here. The Salem's Lot new adaptation, which is coming to Max, that is getting a UK cinema release. Pretty exciting. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for when that hits a cinema near me, because I enjoy Salem's Lot immensely. Next up, I'm not going to read this. It's about a documentary for a clothing brand for Halloween costumes, which isn't in the UK. So I know a big portion of the audience is based in the UK. It's going to mean nothing to us. But Ben Cooper Inc. documentary about that. Never heard of it. Next up, after failing to make a splash at the box office just a few short weeks ago, A24's new horror movie, The Front Room, has now been made available to watch at home this week. You can rent The Front Room on digital outlets for $19.99 or purchase it for $24.99. Brandy, from I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, returns to horror in the A24 horror movie The Front Room, which was released in theatres on September 6th. What's particularly interesting about the psychological horror movie is that it's directed by Max and Sam Eggers, the brothers of Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Northman, and the upcoming Nosferatu. The film follows a young, newly pregnant couple forced to take in an ailing stepmother who has long been estranged from the family. Yeah, I watched this trailer. For an A24 film, it did not look that great. It looked a little bit... some of the performances did look quite hammy. Brandy seemed pretty good in the trailer. The stepmother... I'm not sure if that's the point for it to be quite hammy, but it did feel a little bit too much. And with A24, you normally have this kind of high bar of quality, at least as far as I'm aware from what I've seen. I've not seen every A24 release. So, yeah, the trailer for that didn't make me want to rush out and watch it, that's for sure. Next up, Cranked Up Films, in association with 13th Floor Productions and Wallach Productions, has released their feature-length horror anthology, Tenants, on all major VOD outlets today. The horror film, which features 4 tales of interwoven terror, was written and produced by Mary O'Neill, who also stars, with segments directed by Buzz Wallach, Sean Messler, Jonathan Lewis, and Blake Rain. Additional producers include Jay Black, Bill Spadea, Douglas Vermeeren, and Lewis Mesler and Wallach, the latter two having also co-wrote. Tenants revolves on the character of Joni, who, after waking up in an unfamiliar apartment complex, finds herself in a desperate search for her sister while being hunted by a shadowy figure. As she makes her way through the building, unspeakable horrors befall the tenants around her, one of which appears to be a ginormous spider. You only get a very brief glimpse of it in the trailer, but the trailer looked pretty good for this. It looked like there's some money behind this, or at least the production qualities looked like a bit of a step up versus some of the other films. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for this one, hoping it drops in the UK. I'll have a quick look. I have been checking some of the other films on Amazon to see if they're available. Tenants. Oh, okay, yeah, Tenants. Rent it for £4.99. Oh, there you go. That's good. So next up, starring Susanna Verst from the similarly titled horror hit Goodnight Mommy, the original, I'll Play Mother was released onto VOD outlets by Gravitas Ventures today. It was directed by Brad Watson. After the death of their mother, 2 children are placed in the care of adopted parents. but it's not long before the new family begin to question if something more sinister is at play. Joe Martin, Shabham Sarif, Jax James, and Aaron Ainsworth also star. I haven't been able to watch the trailer for this as it's not available in our country. I probably could have gone on YouTube and searched it, but I didn't. I had 11 film trailers to try and watch, or 10 other ones, I should say. Next up, from the Dread label, director Aaron Fradkin's Beazle was released on VOD today. Let's have a look. Is that available in the UK? Haven't checked this one. Oh my god. No. There we go. It was released onto video outlets today, except in the UK. It tells the tale of a sinister secret hiding beneath the floors of a cursed New England home. Beazle is directed by Aaron Fradkin and written by Aaron Fradkin and Victoria Frads Frankin. In the indie horror film, over 6 tumultuous decades, 3 unwitting guests of a cursed New England home stumble upon a sinister secret dwelling within its floors, an eternal witch with an insatiable thirst for the souls of the living. LeJean Woods, Bob Gallagher, Victoria Frads Fradkin, Caroline Quigley, and Nicholas Robbins star. So this looks like a pretty creepy witch film, and we don't see witch films that often or done that well. Obviously, The Witch is quite an exception to the rule, but outside of that, the witch mythos isn't often explored in horror films, or if it is, it's sometimes sort of a bit tacked on. You've got the more romanticized witches of something like Charmed, or things like that. But the horror element of The Witch, I think why The Witch was so refreshing is because it's such a creepy area of folklore. Doesn't really get explored actually that often. So this looks like it could be pretty good. Pretty creepy stuff. Next, the body-snatching aliens attempt to navigate love in the modern world in genre-bending comedy The Becomers, which was released on VOD outlets by Dark Sky Pictures today. In The Becomers, dropped to Earth and escaping their dying planet, the 2 extraterrestrials, played by a sequence of actors, seek each other out, jumping from body to body on our planet while becoming increasingly drawn into the madness of modern-day America. Written, directed, and edited by Zach Clark, the film was shot in Chicago and stars Molly Plunk, Mike Lopez, Frank V. Ross, Isabel Alamin, and Keith Kelly, and features the voice of Russell Mael, lead singer of the explosive pop-rock band Sparks. The Becomers is produced by Joe Swanberg and Edwin Linker of Slasher Films. Celebrated horror creature and science fiction FX artists Brian Spears and Pete Gerner designed the striking aliens featured in the film. So that's quite an interesting little look at here of the aliens where they have these kind of like neon glowing eyes. Quite a neat little look. They also do the scream that is quite similar to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I mean, I quite enjoy good body snatching sci-fi horror, sci-fi thriller, when done well. Obviously, the 70s version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland is incredible. I also really loved the, I think it's just called Body Snatchers, the Abel Ferrara film, which is quite hard to come by these days, but that was really good. The 90s one set on an American army base. Let's just have a quick look on Amazon for that. Oh my god, why is Amazon being so awkward? Body Snatchers. Is that available? Oh, okay, it says Prime Video. No, that's 1978. Okay, so the 1994 one you can rent or buy. Let's add that to my watch list so I don't forget, because I do enjoy that one. So, next up in this massive list of new films, Vinegar Syndrome makes its first foray into original productions with 8 Eyes, a retro horror movie nightmare co-produced with Not the Funeral Home, the team behind Shudder's The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. It's now streaming exclusively on Shudder. Yes, it is. I've checked in the UK. This is there. I've added it to my watch list because it looks pretty good. In 8 Eyes, a mysterious local crashes a couple's vacation through the former Yugoslavia, pulling them deeper into his web of psychic rituals. Co-writer and director Austin Jennings, working with an originating idea by Justin Martell, gets ambitious for his feature film debut. Photographed entirely on location in Serbia and Macedonia and on 16mm Kodak film, 8 Eyes draws from European genre cinema and American horror films of the 70s to create a nightmarish tableau of nostalgia twisted into berserk new shapes. Set among the ruins of the former Yugoslavia, Eight Eyes was developed with significant contributions from the film's local cast and crew to ensure an authentic portrayal of the cultural environment in which it is set, one rarely been documented on film, Vinegar Syndrome says of their original production. Yeah, I really like the trailer for this. It has such an authentic feel to like early 70s American or Italian horror. The music, the damaging of the film, even the audio, everything of it feels quite authentic. It doesn't have that kind of attempted authenticity where you've just got like added digital film grain, or you can normally tell when something is going for an aesthetic rather than giving that feel of the aesthetic. And this very much does nail the feel. So I've added this to my watch list. I do remember to just actually look at my watch list every so often because I don't want to forget about watching that. Maybe that's something I'll try and watch and review for next week's show. But looks pretty cool. Oh, God, next up. Shout Studios, in collaboration with A Kiss and Tale Productions, Convoke Media, and Pixium Film Group, brought the gruesome thriller Succubus to VOD outlets today. Written and directed by R.J. Daniel Hanna, Succubus boasts a talented cast of Brendan Bradley, Rachel Cook, Olivia Applegate, Derek Smith, Emily Kincaid, Rosanna Arquette, and Ron Perlman. Produced by Todd Slater and Anna Elizabeth James, Ari Novak, Ron Perlman, and R.J. Daniel Hanna, Succubus follows a young father going through a marital separation, joins a dating app, and matches with a beautiful but mysterious young woman whose powers of seduction and manipulation entangle him in a mystery more horrifying than he could have ever imagined. Coached by his oversexed friend Eddie, Chris, a new father, joins the star-crossed dating app just to see what's out there, and eventually comes to the conclusion he should probably rekindle things with his estranged wife. But when he matches with Ada, a seductive young woman with a mysterious past, his curiosity gets the better of him, and he finds himself getting sucked into her world even as his own life falls apart. As Chris, Eddie, and Ada's stalker, Dr. Zephyr, circle her, Ada's power grows, finally revealing her harrowing true nature. Yeah, this one looked pretty cool as well, actually. There's some money behind it. Ron Perlman is great, pretty much in anything. And the idea of this this nervous guy going into the world of dating, meeting this attractive woman who is just entrapping him. It comes across like it's going quite well. And obviously when you then get some random guy saying, oh, if you're talking to a woman online, steer clear of that. She's bad news. She's dangerous. Is he going to listen? Probably not. Yeah, I've had a quick look. I don't think this is available in the UK, or not that I could see. So maybe not yet, but it looks like it could be quite an entertaining film. Some good performances. It looks like it's quite good. On the other end of the spectrum, Gravitas Ventures released Night of the Harvest on digital platforms today. A spine-chilling thriller where masks and costumes aren't just for fun, they're part of a terrifying ritual. Night of the Harvest is the third horror feature film created by the Carter Inc. Films team of Christopher M. Carter and Jessica Morgan. Carter says his passion for the Halloween season is what brought the film to life, and exploring the roots of the ancient Samhain tradition and coupling that with a family dynamic is what inspired the story for his latest indie horror effort. A year after surviving a brutal attack, Madison is still grappling with the trauma of that night. Seeking a sense of normalcy, she reluctantly agrees to join her sister, Audrey, and her friends at a Halloween bash, hoping for a night of fun and distraction. But the festive atmosphere quickly turns deadly when a masked killer begins to hunt them down one by one. Madison must confront her deepest fears and uncover the sinister secrets that bind her to this horror. I mean, I say the other end of the spectrum because the trailer didn't look great. It looked like your kind of bargain basement, cheap slashers. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but like I mentioned earlier on about you can tell from production values, normally gives you a potential indication of what kind of level of entertainment you're going to get. Obviously, they're not the be-all, end-all story and exposition and how the execution goes are the key things, but it is normally give you a bit of an idea of what kind of work has gone on behind the project. Night of the Harvest, especially in comparison to quite a few of the other trailers, wasn't it for me. And finally, 4 Digital Media released Winter Island on VOD today. Tony Dupe directed the film, starring Elijah Canizzaro. When a young girl is found dead on a small wooded island, her teenage brother's post-mortem vision point to an evil presence within their own family. He soon comes across an eerie, potentially supernatural phenomena and begins to suspect the worst. Clark Coffey and Chris Joseph Taylor wrote the screenplay for Winter Island. Looks like a tight little thriller. Doesn't give too much away. There's a bit of a supernatural element there, along with a potential serial killer or religious, overtly religious psychopath, potentially. But I did like the look of this. I think the most encouraging thing about this is the amount of these new releases in a week that do look pretty good. It's only a small portion that I thought looked kind of shitty. But I think it's like 9 of the 11 I would probably watch. I think they looked not too bad. Next up, another new film coming out, which I've watched the trailer for. I know, shock horror. Live Screamers, now available on Blu-ray and VOD. Stay alive for the social media generation. Write-up is from John Squires. I'm just going to have a quick look, as I tend to. If this is on Prime Video, it is $3.99 to rent. Well, let's just add that to my watch list, which I never look at. So, after earning rave reviews on the festival circuit from many, including Bloody Disgusting's Megan Navarro and Matt Donato, gaming horror movie Live Screamers was released today. Michelle Iannatono's Live Screamers is now available on Blu-ray and VOD outlets. This timely take on screen live found footage follows an ensemble of video gamers led by Michael Smallwood of Halloween Kills and the Righteous Gemstones. Both things I've seen. I don't recognise the name, so I don't know who that is. Christopher Trindade, Worst Laid Plans, and Ryan LaPlante, Holy Hell. I don't know if I've seen Holy Hell, that sounds familiar. After taking home the George A. Romero Fellowship at Salem Horror and touring festivals including Panic Fest, Unnamed Footage, and Nevermore, the film currently sits at a fresh 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. In Live Screamers, a group of content creators are pitted against each other by a gruesome video game with lethal stakes. In addition to taking audiences on a thrilling ride, the horror film tackles issues of parasocial relationships, corporate greed, and the crushing unsustainability of online creation. There's a region-free Blu-ray available directly from Octopunk Media's store page, as well as Amazon. And it's available, on the US VOD, UK VOD, and Vimeo VOD worldwide. I quite like the look of this. You've got this Unreal Engine game where you're jumping between these various content creators in their streaming setups. Similar to this, similar to the Ministry of Horror HQ, which I realised I forgot to put my light on. Oh well. But when attacks are happening in the game, the attacks are actually happening to them in person. It looks like it's a bit of a comedy horror in terms of there's a bit of a tone to it, which I quite liked. I know comedy horror, the two things do go hand in hand, but it can be quite cringy if they can't nail the tone, if it's not actually funny. This looks like it's got that potential. There weren't particular moments that I laughed out loud in the trailer, but quite a few likable characters in it, along with your typical streamer bros and dodgy online-looking creators, which, every week there seems to be some sort of revelation there. But Live Screamers, I quite like the look of. I mean, it's rare. It's rare that I'm seeing all these films I like the look of. There you go. That's out now. Next, sad news for fans of Chucky. It's been cancelled at Sci-Fi in USA after 3 seasons. Megan Navarro writes this up. This Friday brings the saddest of news to Chucky fans. Variety reports that the series has been cancelled. The horror comedy series aired on both USA Network and Sci-Fi. According to Variety sources, there had been discussions of bringing the show back for an abbreviated final season or even a wrap-up film, but ultimately to no avail. I'm heartbroken over the news that Chucky won't be coming back for a 4th season, but I'm so grateful for the killer 3 years we did have, series creator Don Mancini said in the statement. I'd like to thank UCP, Sci-Fi, Peacock, Eat the Cat, our awesome cast and Toronto-based crew, the best in the business, and finally to our amazing fans, a big bloody hug. Your incredible #Renew Chucky campaign really warmed Chucky's cold heart. Chucky will return. He always comes back. Chucky season 3 recently sliced recently sliced its way onto Blu-ray on August 13th, 2024. The Chucky season 3 finale ended with the lovable killer doll breaking the fourth wall and directly addressing the fans, officially announcing that, well, he was running for a fourth term. While it appears he won't get that fourth term, we can likely see him again in feature form eventually. Yeah, I just never I never got to see the third season. I don't think it's come onto the UK TV yet. Still never finished the second season. It was a bit of a drop, unfortunately. I'm not sure if that continued into season 3 or if it got back on track, but I enjoyed the first season at least. But sad news that it's been cancelled. What a shame. So we'll do one more bit of news. We don't need to talk about some of those bits. So finally, No More Room in Hell 2 launches into early access on Steam on October 22nd from Mike Wilson. Top Banner Studios recently narrowed down their October releases for the long-awaited co-op title No More Room in Hell 2, announcing the title will launch in early access on Steam on October 22nd. In addition to the announcement, the team has posted a new development blog focusing on one of the many areas of the massive power plant map. The army checkpoint is located in the northern region, near the gas station that was shown in the Summer Game Fest trailer. This region is quite dense with infrastructure, and through its environments tells the story of the initial parts of the undeadly pandemic, with parts of the population trying to flee to safety via transportation routes. Okay, I mean, online co-op, not my thing, but if you're fans of that, check it out. Now, I did have a look on Steam earlier on, just to update some games, and there's a new single-player open world, but based in the UK game called like Harlow or Hanlow Manor or something. It's got Hanlow or Hanley, something like that. I've added it to my wish list because it's a tight month this month, so I will not be getting it. But ooh, that looked good. That looked good. A single-player horror game with very good graphics from the looks of things, that looks genuinely creepy, that isn't a co-op 4v1 or whatever. Okay, I'm interested. I'm going to keep an eye on the price on that one, but hey, who knows? Who knows? Anyway, that's it for the horror news. That was the news.
This is God.
Bosh, there we go. There we go. Blasted through it. So, first up in the film reviews. I got around to watching When the Screaming Starts. When the Screaming Starts. Now, this has been on Shudder for a couple of weeks. And initially I thought, oh, I'm not sure about that. It's this kind of low budget British comedy horror, like mockumentary, I guess, almost. And it is that. It is, but it is actually quite humorous. Like it's from 2021, I believe, but I've never heard of it till it arrived on Shudder. But When the Screaming Starts is directed by Conor Burrow, written by Conor Burrow and Ed Hartley. 2021 release, stars Yasin Zaitz-Atur, Catherine Bennett Fox, and Lee Nicholas Harris. As per usual, we'll talk a little bit about the blurb, talk about the highs, lows of the film, and I'll give it a score out of 10. When Norma Graysmith is invited into the home of an aspiring serial killer, Aidan Mendel, he believes he has the subject for the documentary that will make his career. There isn't a Wikipedia page, so that's all the blurb that I've got. But don't let the trailer fool you. This is much better than the trailer kind of lets on. So think mockumentary in the style of these talking head segments, along with following, but instead of The Office, we're following the documentarian, who is trying to make this documentary, and he meets Aidan. And Aidan is instantly likable, even though he's an aspiring serial killer. You can tell he's just someone that's watched way too many horror films, likes the idea of that, but not the actual execution. And part of this meeting, Aidan, we find out about who he wants his first victim to be. He has a victim list. And it's this chap that he used to be in a band with, and he broke up the band. And it then cuts to this video, really bad VHS copy of this metal band running through the woods with like black metal face paint on. And there's like CGI fire, but like, really terrible CGI fire, flying around in the air. It is ridiculous, but I think it is a great thing having that music video so early into the film, because you can't help but smile. They then go through interviewing potential serial killers to join his cult. He's starting a cult. He wants to be like a bit of a Charles Manson-esque type. And there's various killers. There's a set of twins. His girlfriend, who seems to have a fascination with almost one of the lead serial killers, this girl. I can't remember any of their names. There's also a chap there who doesn't speak English and thinks it's just a yoga retreat until he realizes this definitely isn't a yoga retreat. And things start spiraling from there because, as I mentioned, it becomes quite apparent that whilst he's done a great job organizing a cult of serial killers, he himself isn't ready to actually do that. And the documentarian is becoming very, very, very enamored, not just with the lead redhead serial killer lady, but also the idea of his documentary capturing this footage and following the story to the point of going far too deep in the rabbit hole. Performance-wise, I think everyone does a great job in this. No one is particularly poor. The documentarian, I can't see who he is on the cast list. Cast list doesn't really appear to be in order. Either that or he doesn't have a picture on IMDb Pro. But the documentarian, he's pretty good. But the standout has to be Ed Hartland as Aidan. He's just funny. He's just funny in this. I'm having a quick look at what other things he's done. The Crown. He was a benefits officer in The Crown. A few other TV shows. Supercell. Did an episode of that. But not really anything I'm familiar with. So he's a bit of an unknown actor. But really, really good in this. I don't really have any major kind of negatives. I think the score works well. The kills, there's nothing too special there. They're generally stabbing kills. It's nothing too over the top or grotesque. You get some throat slits. So there's a stab in the face. But I guess it does get genuinely quite creepy near the end. There's a chase sequence in the finale leading to a moment of real isolation that I thought, okay, while we had a nice tone of comedy at the start that worked well, or humour more so, because it's not like a laugh out loud film, it does that good job of then slowly creeping more into the horror route. And yeah, I don't really have any negatives for that. Like, it's pretty good. I mean, in terms of a score, was it amazing? No. But did I enjoy it? Yes. I thought the performance was pretty good. It does drag a little bit. It does drag a little bit. Probably in the 2/3 into it. But I think it does quite a good job of transitioning from comedy into horror without it being too jarring, because that can be a bit of an issue sometimes if things suddenly jump from one to the other. I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I don't think it's quite a 7. It didn't blow me away, but I had a great time with it. I think part of it was being quite surprised, just because the trailer looked kind of like it could be quite corny. 6.5 out of 10 for when the screaming starts. Next up, I watched probably about an hour before going on to record this, Oddity. Oddity, I've heard a lot of buzz about this. Odyssey is a 2024 Irish horror film written and directed by Damien McCarthy. Now, Damien McCarthy, I think, he did his first film, Caveat. And I know he did that purely because there is a there's a moment of the rabbit from Caveat appearing in this in a little kind of cameo. It's a very unique looking rabbit toy, so it's quite obvious that it must have been that. But yeah, it's his new film. So, Oddity. It follows a blind medium and curio shopkeeper who's still grieving the death of her twin sister a year prior, when a wooden mannequin from her collection becomes crucial to her quest to uncover the truth about her sister's murder. Written and directed by Damien McCarthy, starring Gwilym Lee, Caroline Bracken, Tadgir Murphy, Caroline Menton, Jonathan French, and Steve Wall. So we'll look a bit more into the plot. There is an IMDb page, so I can talk a bit about the plot, but I won't go too deep into spoilers, and I'll start giving my thoughts. Alone one night, Danny Adello Timmis, the wife of psychiatrist Ted Timmis, is brutally murdered while renovating the couple's newly acquired country house. Olin Boole, one of Ted's former patients, visited Danny that evening, warning her that a stranger had infiltrated the home. Olin is ultimately convicted of the crime and is later found brutally murdered in his room in the psychiatric hospital. 1 year later, Danny's twin sister Darcy Odello, a blind clairvoyant with psychometric powers, is visited by Ted at her Cabinet of Curiosities shop in Cork, and the two make plans to visit again. Several days later, Darcy arrives unexpectedly at the country house where Ted now resides with his new girlfriend, Yana, a pharmaceutical representative. Preceding Darcy's arrival is the shipment of a large crate containing a strange, life-size wooden mannequin. Ted departs to his night shift at the hospital, leaving Darcy alone with Yana, who wishes to leave but is prevented from doing so when her car keys vanish. Yana is frightened when she notices the mannequin inexplicably moving positions and drops her cell phone from an upstairs landing, destroying it. Upon examining the mannequin, Yana finds several strange objects inside holes in its head, including photographs of Danny and Darcy, locks of hair, a tooth, and a vial of blood. So. This one has had as I mentioned, a fair amount of buzz since premiering at South by Southwest in March. So I've been keen to get around to watching this, but I don't think it had a UK cinema release, or if it did, very limited, not near me, or if it was near me, it was in and out before I knew. But this is a neat little horror. It looks incredible in terms of some of the shots that take place in this. There are quite a few moments that are jump scares without being typical jump scares, not like you're close a door or open a door and someone's there or this, that, and the other. But it does a good job of having these particular moments where there's an appearance, like a ghostly figure, that just gets underneath your skin. Particularly when we see the murder, which doesn't happen at the very start of the film. We see much later on what actually happened. And that is done in quite a creepy manner. There's a transition shot between the killer approaching and then the killer sitting outside the location where the murder has happened. The area is clean prior, and then when the switch happens and they're sat down outside, there's blood everywhere in the location where the murder has occurred. I won't say too much, not to give too much away. But that's a really neat transition there. Yeah, the wooden doll, or the wooden life-size mannequin, is quite creepy. I didn't really know what its function was, but that does become apparent as the film continues. But it does look odd. It was carved out of wood, and it has this horrible mouth that's like ajar. It kind of looks like Swamp Thing with a man face. It's very unique, very unnerving, has to be said. Performances in this are all pretty great. The hospital, which we only visit a couple of times, where the psychiatrist works, the psychiatric hospital, is somewhere where, if there were to be a sequel, which I don't imagine this will have a sequel, but if there were, that's a location that could really be explored more. It looks like your typical asylum from like the 60s, 70s. Just really dark, grey-green hued, creepy, archaic machinery attached to people's heads. It looked quite gnarly. We only get brief glimpses of it there and some of the staff, but it's something I wouldn't mind seeing explored a bit more in the future for sure. In terms of like kills, and I guess with talking about horror films, we have to kind of mention that there are a couple of deaths, but not really any that you see. It's more so the after effect, particularly Olin mentioned being found brutally murdered. I mean, his head is completely gone. It's just a mass pool of blood and skull. It's pretty insane. He also has this creepy, unique eye where he's only got one eye, but the other eye just has this really weird design to it, like a drawn-on iris, like very sort of cheap. But it creates this quite creepy-looking visual to instantly make you distrustful of this person, and that is done on purpose, and there is a reason for that a bit later on. But you get a story as to what was going on there. So appearances can be deceiving. There's nothing really bad about this. I think the score is incredible. The score puts you on edge, and especially in the finale when there's a bit of a stalking moment. Someone's trying to get away from an individual. I won't go into details, but the audio design there, the sound design, and the score is just. I mean, I was watching it with headphones on, and that really helped because that really makes your skin prickle. It's very, 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 very well done. Again, there's not really any particular negatives that I can knock anything too much down for. It's a good self-contained story. I liked the last moment of the film. And I had a decent time watching it. Again, it's a film where I had a decent time watching it, a good time watching it, but I wasn't blown away. I think it's a very well made film. I think the story is pretty good. Some good moments of scares. Maybe I'll give it another watch because I watched it on my computer. It's obviously not the great environment for being engrossed into a film, but I would definitely happily watch this again. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for Oddity. And finally, on the reviews, I managed to get to the cinema and watch Strange Darling. Strange Darling is a 2023 American thriller film written and directed by J.T. Molnar and starring Willa Fitzgerald, Kyle Garner, Barbara Hershey, and Ed Begley Jr. Set in rural Oregon, the film focuses on a man and woman who engage in a one-night stand that devolves into a cat-and-mouse game of murder. It is divided into 6 narrative chapters arranged in non-linear order and presented as a dramatization of the pinnacle of serial killer's years-long murder spree in the western United States. The director has neither confirmed nor denied if the film is actually based on real events, saying, perhaps it is. It was shot on 35mm film on location in Oregon in the summer of 2022 by Giovanni Ribisi, marking his debut as a cinematographer, which is pretty cool. It premiered at the 2023 Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas, and was given a limited theatrical release in the United States on October 23rd, 2024 by Magenta Light Studios. Yeah, so I didn't realize how long ago this was made, and such a big gap between its initial festival debut and its release. But first thing that I'll say, and this isn't a thing about the film, but just about my movie-going experience. I mentioned something on the last show, or might have been the show prior, about people talking in the cinema. This was another thing. So it was quite a sparse screening. This isn't a film that's had a lot of media, a lot of advertising in the UK at least. So there wasn't many people in there, and we sat one row away from the back, in the back corner. Typically, there's 2 people sat behind us. Now, during the trailers, which, it's just the trailers, whatever. I like watching the trailers, but not everyone does, sure. Loudly talking through the trailers. The whole thing of, rather than just trying to have a conversation because you sat right next to each other, they're talking to try and hear each other over the trailers, and it was really quite annoying. Then the film started, and it wasn't too much talking, but it was just like opening, rustling, slurp, burp, and I don't know if I've become heightened to hearing this because of it being right behind me. And once you're aware of audible locations, senses, you're then more heightened to it, perhaps. But it did just seem like they were obnoxiously loud, talking quite a few times. Even at the start, it says this film was shot entirely in 35mm, all setting the scene that this is how this film was shot. And straight away, one of them loudly goes, "Oh, that's going to mean fuck all to us, isn't it?" I don't want to sound like a snob, but they just seem like dipshits. It just seemed like, is this? I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to be a snob, but is this film for you? I don't know. You seem like morons. Hey, maybe I'm the dickhead here, but yeah, they were just really, really obnoxious. It wasn't throughout the whole film. I'll give them that. Fair enough. You could keep quiet at portions of the film. Well done. But I kind of need to reiterate something before. If you're gonna come to the cinema, just talk through a film, you're a dick. um, you know, it's just an irritant. It's just cinema etiquette, and I know a lot of people have the same annoyance. But then you also get a lot of people going, just having fun. I'm at the cinema. I'm going to enjoy myself. Don't be such a prude. Blah blah blah. And there's always going to be two sides to the argument of enjoying yourself and being loud, or being respectful and enjoying the film that you've paid money to see. I sit on that side of the fence. Don't have full on conversations and stuff during a film. It's just stupid. Anyway, to the film that we're here to review. So, talking about the plot, the film is presented in 6 chapters and an epilogue, arranged in a non-linear fashion, outlining the final crimes of a prolific serial killer. In rural Hood River County, Oregon, which looks really, really nice, a woman, the lady, meets a man, the demon, and the two go to a local motel to engage in a one-night stand. Prior to renting a room, the lady explains to the demon the risks women take engaging in such behaviour and makes him answer whether or not he is a serial killer. After he says no, the lady agrees to proceed and asks that she and the demon engage in a hyper-realistic, sadomasochistic roleplay in which he pretends to be a murderer and she is his victim. I'll kind of stop there because the plot, this isn't how it plays out start to finish in the film. This plot on IMDb has rearranged it to go into the chronological order of how things occur in the film's timeline, but not in the film's portrayal. The film jumps from like chapter 4 to chapter 1 to, it jumps around. And I really did dig that. But the actual film opened with a woman driving all panicked. She's got blood on the side of her head. A guy driving behind her. He gets out. He shoots like one of her tires out, I believe, and she crashes her car. She's running through the woods being chased by this creepy man with a rifle. And that sets up this cat and mouse game. I really liked the 35mm stock appearance of the film. It just added this cinematic feel that we just don't get a lot in films these days. You can get a great cinematic feel with digital cinema, but there just seems to be a bit of an over-reliance on what can we do on screen rather than feeling like cinema. And this does have that feel. I think Willa Fitzgerald is incredible in this. I'm just having a look at her Wikipedia because I don't know if I've seen her in anything else. Oh, she's in Reacher. Oh my god, I didn't recognise her. Yeah, of course, she's in the first season of Reacher. I thought I recognised her from something, but couldn't put my finger on it. Well, there we go. I don't know if my fiance recognised her from that either, but I'll have to mention that to her. And Kyle Garner isn't really making a name for himself in horror films. We talked about a couple of his films recently. There was the recent Thriller, where he goes on a shooting rampage. Forgotten the title. That's my bad. I think it's called Passenger, and is in Smile, and I believe Smile 2. Although how big of a role he has in Smile 2, based on the story, not too sure. But he is great in this as well. Barbara Hershey. Oh yeah, I've seen her in a few things. Ned Begley Jr. Yep. Recognise who they are in the film. But I liked how the actual story progresses, start to finish. I think it was very cleverly done. Performance is great. The music is really, really nice in this. Really, 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 really good. And I think I think the general actual story in it just works so nicely. It doesn't go in the routes that you're expecting it to go. And even when you think you know how this is going, it just takes another detour, but it all makes quite logical sense. It's just a very smart film. I went in this not really knowing what to expect. I briefly watched the trailer, but I quite like to know as little as possible, especially if there's a good bit of buzz about a film. If there's a nice bit of buzz on social media, in the horror community, then I try to just know as little as possible, so I'm just along for the ride. And I think that worked out nicely in this. I'm glad that I didn't look into anything beforehand. What would I give this out of 10? I don't think there's any negatives, really. Yeah, for that reason, I'm giving this an 8.5. It might still be in the cinemas where you are in the UK. It might not. But if it is, I would say go out your way to watch it, especially on a big screen with surround sound. It's definitely worth that for the admission. Great story, great performances in this. Thoroughly enjoyed this. 8.5 out of 10 for Strange Darling. So that brings us to the end of another Ministry of Horror. Thank you very much for watching Ghouls and Fiends. Apologies I didn't get to do any game streaming this week. It's with people coming up, it's just been manic the last couple of days. A very busy start to the week, very manic end to the week. And so maybe next week. I don't want to commit to any gaming streaming, but it's been very, very, very busy. So keep an eye on our Twitter or X, Ministry_Horror, for news there. Be sure to like and subscribe this video and the channel on YouTube, Ministry of Horror. Also, this goes on podcast platforms, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check those out. Yeah, I think that's all the plugs. TikTok, I occasionally put clips from the show on TikTok. They do some pretty good numbers. Be sure to follow that. I'd like to grow that, even more if I can. But I appreciate it wherever you're watching, listening, and engaging. Thank you very much. That's it for another show, Ghouls and Fiends. I'll catch you next time.